Corvettes have always been the car you buy if you want to have supercar level performance but not spend $200,000. And after 70 years of making these cars, Chevy has made one that blows the competition out of the water. Today, we are in the C8 Corvette, and the question is this car the best place to put $65,000? Powering the C8 Corvette is a 6.2 liter V8 placed in the middle of the car. Now, this engine is based on the LT1, which was in the C7 Corvette that we reviewed, but this one makes 30 more horsepower, and you can actually feel that difference. And because the engine is right in the middle of this car, it can launch flawlessly. So the LT2 engine that's in the C8 Corvette makes 490 horsepower, or 495 if you get the Z51 package, and 470 pound-feet of torque, which is 5 more pound-feet of torque than the C7. All of that power is sent to the rear wheels, but because the engine's in the back and 60% of the weight is back there, this thing grips like you would not believe. And Chevy put tires in the back that are 305 in width, which is a fat tire. That is why Chevy claims the C8 Corvette can do a 0 to 60 time of 2.9 seconds. That seems too good to be true, so let's test it.
Ready? Go.
The acceleration in this car in gears 1, 2, and 3 deserve a 10 out of 10, but after gear 3, this thing does die off. But hey, you're already going like 80 miles an hour at that point, so this is the perfect road car. But how about the brakes? It's nice to go this fast so quickly, but this car needs to stop fast too. In the front and back of this car, you have 4 piston brakes. Let's do a 60 to 0 test and see how well this car stops.
Ready, set, go. It'll stop. That's for damn sure.
And have you ever heard of a car that has adjustable brakes? This one does. Kind of. In the infotainment system, which we'll talk about in a moment, you're able to adjust the brake pedal response, which helps those brakes clamp on quicker if you need them to. Given the fact that this is a pretty lightweight car, and I'm also holding this up to supercar standards because it damn sure looks like one, I'm gonna give the brakes a 7 or 8 out of 10. They're really good when they're, not used so much, but once you keep using them, they fade off a little bit too quick. And speaking of weight, this car weighs in at 3,360 pounds, which is 60 pounds more than the C7 Corvette, but it's really not enough to notice the difference. In fact, if anything, it feels better because of this mid-engine layout. Which that leads us on to the next point. How well does this car actually corner? Let's take some sharp corners and see how it does. It to start losing traction, but this thing just keeps going. Unbelievable. Let's really toss it into this one. Oh my gosh. That 40-60 weight distribution with the engine in the middle, it does a job. As you would expect, this car does so well in the corners. The one thing that holds it back is the fact that it's 182 inches in length. That's 15 inches shorter than the Dodge Challenger's Scat Pack. And that is also why a lot of people complain about the turning radius in this car. Take a look at some figure 8s and just full circles in this car. It's not that bad, but considering this is supposed to be like a track supercar, I get it, it's not the best. Now, if everything that we already discussed was not good enough, this comes with a dual clutch automatic transmission, which allows for shifts in just 1/10 of a second. But that comes with a drawback. There is no option to get this car in manual, and there are 2 reasons for that. Number 1, well, a manual driver can never ever match the speed of a dual clutch automatic. And the second reason is that the demand for manuals are at an all-time low. That is quite odd to me considering how many car people just comment, bring back the manual, we need manuals, but no one really buys them. And this engine with the dual clutch makes this one of the smoothest cars ever. I have never felt such smooth speed going from a stop. And remember when Chevy said you could pick this car up for $60,000? Well, COVID-19 came in and the demand for everyone wanting one made this, yeah, like almost double the price. But we're in 2024 now, and the prices for these are actually becoming reasonable. You can pick one of these up used for $65,000, and that places this car right near the C7 Z06, the Camaro ZL1, and the 2024 Mustang Dark Horse. But it's not just the performance that makes me pick this car over all the others. It's this exterior design. This entire car is full of sharp angles, aerodynamics, and 14 beautiful colors to choose from, with this one being torch red, my favorite. When you look at the front of this car, to the untrained eye, that is mistakable for a $250,000 supercar, but it's $65,000. You have those beautiful big LED headlights that really give a lot of status to this car. On the hood, there's no more hood vent like there was on the C7 Stingray, but that's because there's no engine down there, so unless you want your groceries cooled, no reason to put a hood vent there. In the front of the C8, there are 3 obvious areas for cooling, 2 on each side and 1 big one in the grille, which by the way is a far different design from the C7. Just look at the difference between the two. And the side of this car gives it the presence of a McLaren. You have that massive body panel on the side, which by the way is a huge air intake to allow a bunch of cooling to the engine. And at first it looks like there's no door handle, and that's because it's hidden right under that panel. Now that air intake feeds all that air into the engine, and then you have heat extractors right on the top that push all of that hot air right out. And can we take a second to admire the design of the top of this car near the engine bay? That is such a cool design. And the transition from the side to the back of this car almost looks like a McLaren Speedtail, which is a $2 million supercar. Yeah, they're not exactly the same. And the back of the C8 is completely redesigned. Those LED taillights look a whole lot more sharp than the C7. And if you get the right package, you get a nice spoiler on the C8. But what do you guys think? Do you like this car more with or without the spoiler? I like spoilers, but this one without it does look pretty good. And in the back of this car, there are a whole lot more vents for cooling. This car, just like all Corvettes, were born to be on the track. And another very noticeable design element change in the back of this car are the exhaust tips. These ones are squared off, whereas in the C7, you got center place quad tip exhaust, a signature Corvette element that changed in the C8. As a whole, on the outside of this car, I must say this is one of the greatest glow-ups I have ever seen from any generation change in the entire car industry. Do you guys agree? But it's not just the exterior. All of those industry-changing design elements were also brought to the inside. Right when you open up the door on the C8, you immediately notice that almost everything changed from the C7. The entire door panel is not that sporty looking, but it looks really nice, and it's more so luxury in my opinion. And I never thought I'd complain about this, but the door sill on this car is way too big. It makes getting in and out of this car not so comfortable, especially in tight spaces. And when you hop in the driver's seat of this car, well, first let's start with the seat. That is an awesome design. You even get carbon fiber on it, the Corvette logo right on your headrest, and the whole thing just looks so sporty and cool. And when you sit down in it, well, you're pretty damn comfortable, but the steering wheel presentation is also a redesign. It's pretty squared off. You get these massive paddle shifters. I like big paddle shifters. I think it just gives the car a nice luxury touch. And it even has a center marker to help you with more accurate steering. The gauge cluster in the C8 Corvette is configurable based on which drive mode you're in. And by the way, the drive mode selector is quite odd. It's kind of stuck under this leather mode thing. I don't even know what that is, but it makes it hard to actually access the different drive modes. But hey, first world problems, that's ridiculous. And as for the drive modes you do get, you have weather, economy, your own custom mode, tour mode, sport mode, and track mode. And contrary to a lot of sports cars, this is one where you really do notice the differences between the drive modes. When you go from tour to sport or track, the steering stiffens up, the RPMs are held higher, the active exhaust opens those valves and makes this car sound great. And everything in this interior is extremely driver-centric, But when you sit in the passenger seat, they made it so that it feels like your own little cockpit. And honestly, it would still be an honor to sit in the passenger seat of this car. And the infotainment system in the C8 Corvette is such an upgrade from the C7. This thing is one of the best, most responsive infotainment systems I have ever used. And you get quite a few cool features in there. Of course, all the basics like navigation, Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, but when you hit vehicle and select Z mode, you can individually configure all of your drive modes, all the way to the brake feel. I have never seen that in any car before. Now, in there, you can adjust things like the car's security, lighting settings, a lot of just pretty boring stuff, especially considering this car is just about driving it. And one of the coolest things that Chevy did in this interior is this rear view mirror. When you first look back there, you're like, I can't even see out there. I'm pretty sure that's illegal to have an obstructed view, but they put a nice high definition camera right on the top of the back of this car, and it allows you to see perfectly. Even at night, this thing works well. I would prefer that camera in every car over any natural mirror any day, because no matter what the angle is of your rear view mirror, you can see perfectly. And there's more cameras than that. You have another one in the back for when you're reversing, and you have 2 additional ones in the front. Now, jumping back to the interior of the C8, on this center console, also completely redesigned. You just have a long strip of buttons. But I don't want to talk all good stuff about this car. You still get an American-made interior, and some of these buttons get stuck. I don't know if there was some sticky juice spilled on those, but it does scream American-made. Even this little cup holder cover in the center is pretty worn down. When you press it, it gets like stuck and you have to push it open. You would not expect that from a supercar, but there's gonna be drawbacks when you basically get a supercar for $65,000. Another super cool touch in the C8's interior are the air vents. They're little tabs that you press up or down all over the interior that let air come through or stop, and I've never seen a car do it like that, but it's super cool. Another very cool but weird feature in the C8 is the fact that there's no stick to select drive, reverse, or neutral. Instead, you have more tabs to pull from. The park you push, the reverse you pull up, the neutral you push, the drive you pull up, and the manual you push if you only want to use the paddle shifters. That's just yet again another touch that makes this feel like a fighter jet. And even look at the dash of this car. You get nice red stitching in there, and the angles are crazy. I mean, I don't know if there's any use for that other than looking cool. I will say this car is probably a detailer's worst nightmare. And just like the C7 Corvette, this top right here can come off if you want it to. Yes, you do have to do it manually, but I forgive that. Okay, so everything in this interior makes it feel like a fighter jet, but is it actually comfortable? And I'll tell you right now, this car will make you forget you're in a supercar looking beast. If you want this car to be, you can just cruise and forget about everything related to you being in a sports car. And that's exactly what happened to me. I was on my drive down to where I'm recording right now, and I just forgot I was in a C8. This thing feels so smooth. But how about the reliability? These cars have only been out for 4 years, but if you do some research, you'll quickly find that a lot of people say this thing is either average or above average. So I have a question for you. When I become a big YouTuber and I give you $60,000 for being a subscriber, would you spend that money on this car or would you choose something else? That is tough to say. Unfortunately, you can't get manual, so if you're somebody that loves manual cars, you're out of luck, but there is nothing like a dual clutch automatic. Also, be sure to check out the review of the C7 Corvette that I did so you can really see the differences between the two cars. That one is a beast as well, and $20,000 cheaper. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.